Let me start with the man who usually have the wise counsel. The power sector now, what's your take?
Well, I think we have stayed around that mountain for too long. So, like they say in the scripture, it's a time to move forward. And I think this, for me, is the forward-looking thing. And these are the part of the reforms, of course, which people have all clamored for, that we see how things can get better, and we are not overburdening the center and allow the subnationals and local entities to be able to play in most of these sectors, because what the Constitution of Nigeria has done in really putting too much of burden on the federal government really make it to be dysfunctional. So with this happening, we can find that, of course, states that are quite proactive will be able to really sit down and then look at their power situation and then plan their things and do it their own way, which, of course, is actually what federalism is really all about, that people have the opportunity to retain some of their powers to determine certain issues. And one of these critical areas is power. But see, yes, because we're a federation, there's also a need to see that things are done such a way that the distance between one state and the other is not too far. So the need for a regulatory framework cannot be overemphasized, because it is important to see how do we integrate all the states together into one bucket and see, even in terms of the sales of energy, make it easier. How do you migrate the states into the grid? Because the fact that states are producing wouldn't mean that they will just be selling and distributing, because there's also a need for them to also sell to other states who may not have the capacity to generate. And therefore, that regulatory framework becomes very important to put in place to see how do we do this power business from generation to transmission and to distribution, because all these issues have their own peculiar issues, not just transmission alone. Generation is a problem, transmission is a problem, distribution is a problem. So what that would mean is that as states are empowered to do this, they of course have to contribute to the national grid, and then from the national grid you redistribute, and then of course states get value from the national body that regulates that industry. So the need to harmonize and set policy in place to determine how people will play in that industry, I think that's what the ministry is trying to do, and then it's commendable from my point of view.
It's a good one. If it is well done, if a lot of states can take advantage, I'm using if because it's really conditional. Not every state in Nigeria can afford to generate power. Let's talk about transmitting and distributing. Just a few states have been able to do that so far at small levels. Edo State, I think Lagos State, and maybe one or two other states presently in Nigeria. And they've successfully done that, but not widespread, but to some extent supporting businesses. So if a lot of states can key into that, it will achieve the initial aim of privatizing the power sector, which was to make power available at competitive rates. So it means that you could choose to subscribe to the state-generated power supply. You could choose to subscribe to the other discos. It depends on which one seems better for you. So that way, the issue of power not being available or part tariff being too high may just be addressed with that. But again, it comes down to the states. How many states can do this?
Well, the good thing is with these development, you give room for more players. It gives room for more competition. You have more international and local investors coming into the space, and what that means is the customers can choose, who to work with or who to bank with. And what that means is it brings efficiency into the system. And now that you are having a kind of regulatory framework which will also instill standards, but because it's not just about investing in that sector, there must be layout procedures, standards, so that will guide, rules of engagement and rules of operation in that sector. So that's the essence of this policy that the minister is talking about. And the good thing is, I feel, even states and local government can key into it. You can have a partnership with an organization.
You mentioned local government in
PPP,
this time.
Yes, that can be achieved. A station
I think
where
we're talking about states and maybe the private sector, not local government, because I don't see the capacity of a lot of local government.
Which means you bring in an investor into local government, into an area, and then they look at the layout and see what they can do. It doesn't have to be financed by the government or the local government.
The aspect
it
you're talking
be a PPP
about.
arrangement.
You shouldn't even
No,
go
we
there.
all know, for some they can afford it, but it doesn't have to be outrightly financed by the local government or the state government. It can be a public-private arrangement whereby you bring in investors and then you provide the enabling environment for these investors, to take over. And I think that's what look at what happened to the telecom in Nigeria, which exactly was the fact that they created the right environment, the right framework for, individuals, private organizations, to come. It was decentralized and privatized, and now it's better for it. So same thing can be replicated in the power sector. All right, let's move on to blue economy, which is the rave of the moment, the area where federal government is more passionate about, because recently they had to rejig the name of the ministry to Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy. Now, the minister says the reduction in security incidences on Nigerian waters and wider Gulf of Guinea as a result of effective and legal implemented the nation's he's talking about the issue of what you call piracy here, Now, the minister is trying to say that the reason why you've not recorded cases of piracy in Nigeria in recent times is because of the legal framework and then the bringing up the right surveillance on Nigerian waterways, which in recent times, we agree that the issue of piracy is a global thing, A few years back, you have these issues occurring at the Niger Delta area of Nigeria, a lot of piracy in Nigeria coastal line, whereby even at a point, contracts were given to Tompolo and the rest of them, former militants, who run security outfit to protect, pipelines and some of the waterways. But now in recent times, we've had a reduction of that, and the minister is trying to attribute that to having the right legal framework, and then the right surveillance on Nigerian waterways. Hidauza, what's your take on this? In recent times, Nigeria have not recorded much of activities that has to do with piracy in Nigeria, even though it's a global issue, and that's what the minister is trying to say. Do you think
I think the minister didn't say anything that is strange to us, because we are just in the front of the water here. Yeah. So we can see the gunboats all moving up and down on the marine here. So it actually suggests that, of course, we have tightened up security on our water. This is from this end, and so you are not having plenty of incidences. And one of the real reasons, of course, again, that has affected trade in Nigeria is actually this issue of insecurity on our waterways. I remember some years ago, I was going to get some equipment from China, and I was trying to convince the manufacturer of the equipment to ship those equipment, because I was going to use them in Benin City, to put it to the closest port to me. Either Port Harcourt would be better for me, or even get to Warri, and they said, no, we can't get there. The maximum we can get to is Apapa Port. And then, of course, this has actually put pressure on the basic infrastructure in Lagos, so to speak, because Lagos seems to be the only gateway right now that, of course, these activities are happening. So with increased security on our waterways, it is easier for shipping companies to be able to do business in this other side, and then of course shift some traffic there, create some economy in that area, and then of course we can take advantage, full advantage of our water system. Well, to the extent to which the law is affecting this one is what I might be able to say, but I think really the Navy is doing so much, and also coupled with the agreement the previous regime had with, of course, Tompolo and his men, to also help with the surveillance, and I think it's paying off. And we have consistently seen some rise in the output production, even in terms of crude in recent time. That, of course, we can boast that today we can do up to 1,700 million barrels per day. Is also an attestation to the fact that security has improved greatly. But I think, like they said, it's the greatest room in the whole world is the room for improvement, that we need to do more to see that our waterways are safe enough that people can do business, not just even the people walking through the water. Even around the coastal belt, a whole lot of activity should be happening if the places are safe enough. And I think that's what government should focus on, because if we must develop, security must be a priority. At the waterways, at the airways, at the landways, all these places should be secured. And then, of course, there's a great need now to invest in the basic infrastructure, which is the real issues in the port. If the minister can do so much, and we have to invest in our port infrastructure, dredging of the waters are done, and we are having more betting platforms in the port, and then, of course, a lot of things can come. And shipments can come into here. The more shipment we receive, of course, the more excise and import duties we get. All these things are the things that will actually make that economy to be worth the while as it is.
Yes, it also said it all, because what's insecurity around the waterways has cost Nigeria is so much. Beginning from oil thefts, it has cost Nigeria a whole lot. And then for even those who are in the shipping business, sometimes they also complain about theft, about the activities of pirates in the waterways. When you mentioned the coastal areas, it just hits me really, because there's a lot of insecurity going on around that area. If you look at the Niger Delta area, particularly where there have been incidences of kidnapping and all, what has made it very easy is the waterways and how porous it is, that people can just, kidnap someone from within the city and then they move them through the waterways. So ensuring that the waterways are secure is not just going to help the shipping business, it's also going to help security in the city, because that part looks like, oh, it's easy to take people across the boat. If there's security, it also curbs that aspect of criminality in the city. So it's a very wide web that if you're able to tackle that area, the effect of it is widespread into other areas. So I'm looking at security being extended to other areas where we could have river ports, and where we even have ports that are not well utilized. And it will also boost the economy of those areas. For instance, Anambra have been trying to have the river ports, even Edo State trying to have the Giligili seaport and all of that. So if we could have all of this working, that means we're quite ready to harness all the gains of the blue economy. But until we'll extend beyond the Lagos ports, it's really not going to be full gain for us.
Now let's look at the Blue Economy project. It's not a new thing globally, but Nigeria is taking more interest in it now than ever, because they feel they can tap the resources inherent in it. Let me take this to Ida Hausa. What do you think should be the priority of the minister now, looking at the issue of Blue Economy project? What should he do to enable to maximize the opportunity and the potential inherent in the blue economy?
There's so much that is before the minister, apart from the infrastructure that we have spoken about, is also to see how we can also get the water clean. You see, because the waste deposit in the water is also make it really very dangerous, really, even for sea aquatic life. So these are issues, because I don't think we are doing so much in that regard. Because the last study I saw from the United Nations on the impact of plastic waste in the oceans is massive. And again, because of the activities of the production of crude and the transportation around waterways also make the water really toxic. Because the blue economy does not just settle around shipments alone. there's also aquatic life that, of course, we should harvest. Yesterday, we were talking about Norway with fish. Euryalic mala fish is inside the water. So all these things are the things that the world are taking advantage of. Now, there's also a whole lot of tourism that grow around the waterways. That's why I talked about the cleanliness of the waterways and the security around those coastal belts to see that we can begin to build good and invest in skyscraper, because tourism naturally grow around the water. And I made this example the last time. Palm Jumeirah came as a result of UAE thinking of how to increase the size of their waterways, and from 36 miles to about 360 miles. So these are people who are creating water, and nature has given this to us for free. So those activities that are happening around those water area are things that, of course, we must have to focus on. But majorly, the pollution of the water had to be taken care of. In this case, which means, of course, the Minister of Marine and Blue Economy will need to do a kind of a mass awareness campaign or sensitization of people who live in the coastal area not to pollute the waters, because that is also very important, and we need to emphasize that, because it is easy for people who live in coastal belt to just empty their waste in the water, thinking that the water is going to carry them. But that's dangerous to that economy which we are looking at in that area. So the minister must do all of this. There have to be a lot of engagement with stakeholders, and also to see how we can also clean up that sector, because there's also so much rot in the sector. There are a lot of bottlenecks in terms of multiplication of agencies within the port area. For example, we can have one-stop shop in the port where, of course, data are synchronized and shared between the agencies. So there's no need to have an NDLA look at a vessel that had come or container that is in the port. Then, of course, some come to do his work. Then you have NAVDAC doing his work. All these things cause delays. And then, of course, delays are not good for businesses. So what they should do, see, how do we use technology to solve this? That once this scanning is done by one agency, it is possible for other agencies to actually see it real time, on time, and then, of course, there'll be no need to delay, and then people can move in and move out without necessarily have to face these challenges of seeing too many faces within the port area. I think that, for me, would just be it.
Talking about cleanliness and preventing pollution, charity, they say, begins at home. The environment of the MP, how clean is it? Let's even start from there. And the local tourism, go to most of our beaches. How clean are they? Do they even attract us who are in here? Let's talk about those from outside. So these are things that people really need to take seriously, because the awareness, I believe, will bring the attention to it, because some persons just see it as it doesn't really matter. Even those who have businesses within the beaches don't see the need to keep the environment very clean and conducive. They just feel, oh, it's water. People will want to come there. And that's why some of them are almost running out of business. People hardly go there because the environment is filthy. You want to go there, sit, relax, and just enjoy enjoy nature, but you want to do that within a clean environment. So a lot of sensitization needs to happen, but I believe too it should be followed up with punitive action, because when you talk to people at times without some actions to follow up as punitive measures, when you don't do what is expected, people don't do what they need to do.
In addition to that, I think one of the things that should also be the priorities of the minister is to look at the issue of port automation, how to bring technology into port activities, because there's a deadline set by the International Maritime Organization for all members nations, which has to be for 2025. So, a few days ago, we had the plan by the minister to look at national shipping line, which for me, it's a big distraction. So what he needs to focus on is to look at the issue of port automation, so that at least this would drive all the processes, the activities, daily activities at the port. we have a deadline, which is 2025. Nigeria needs to, up their game so that at least we can be able to meet up with this deadline. And the earlier we start, the better for us. Rather than, diverting the money into acquiring, fleets or ships and things like that towards the national shipping line, which over the years or from the experience that we've had in the past, hasn't been fruitful. It's important for him to look at what he can do in the next 3 to 6 months, to make his ministry or to write his name in the book of history. And I think for me, the issue of port automation, whereby virtually every activity is manually driven. You have customer officers, you have these doing that. Everything has to be automated so that you have a situation whereby within with your own laptop, you can access information, you can access data, and that gives you the impression of what you need to do before you even get to the port. That's why people get to the port. You see them spending days, weeks, spending money on damages and several charges. So with this, I think our ports will be better than what it is.
Yeah, but just to allude to the fact that you have made, the Bureau for Public Service Reform, BPSR, is actually doing a lot in that direction to see that all government agencies are automated. And I am aware that they are doing some training now for some top civil servants to see how to get them key into this program of automating the government, because really that's where revenue leakages all come from. And if we can use e-government to actually block leakages, we can be much more prosperous. And this wide infrastructure gap that we talk about every day, we can start a journey of closing those gaps. So automation is what it is, and we even need to deploy humanoids and robotics to help do some services with not necessarily having human hand who will slow down process. So these are where we are in, because the whole world is driven by AI today, and we don't have to be left behind at all.
Well, having the willpower to do that is what is very key, because we can have the machineries brought, the equipment brought in, but after a while, they are said to have one issue or the other, and at some point, we need the human interface, so we need to revert back to the manual. Take, for instance, the the INEC thing, where people had to resort to manual voting again, So the willpower is basically the issue.
All right, let's look at what is happening at the Federal Capital Territory. The administration has announced plans to reclaim and repurpose ungoverned spaces occupied by hoodlums and criminals. Similarly, this will be converted to parks, recreational centers, a strategy to reduce crime rates in the neighborhoods. The issue of ungoverned spaces, looking at places where they have just been abandoned over the years, and the hoodlums, they've turned themselves to tribal chiefs to take over those spaces, and that's been the breeding ground for criminals, We have something similar to that in Lagos. Some of these federal buildings that have been abandoned now, if you get to them, they are being occupied by hoodlums. And these are things that should be taken with all sense of seriousness. Idauza, what do you think? Ungoverned spaces, what kind of security threats?
Well, I think that it's the right thing to do. Abuja, being the Federal Capital Territory of Nigeria, needs to be beautified, and that's well deserving, because you go to other state capitals and see the way things are done. Abuja had a master plan that has since been violated by people. And one of the things that I have seen in recent time is that a lot of people bring in sentiments and emotion into some of all these things. And then we start to begin to rationalize illegal activities and actions. And that's the thing that's so appalling about our country. And people talking about livelihood. The fact that you need livelihood does not make you to break laws. And I think this is the issues that, of course, the FCT minister need to really put his feet on the ground. There are a whole lot of parks that are designated in the city center. And if you go into them now and see the way those places are abused, they're not good enough. And they're not befitting for a capital territory. So this is what, of course, government really need to address. All the green spaces in FCT, they are being destroyed. by illegal activities. And then, of course, people say, oh, people are just trying to make a living. There are so many ways to make a living without breaking rules and regulations. And a lot of people build on places that are supposed to be recreational centers for people who live in this space, and then the whole place is crowded out. I really feel that we'll have the minister who will have the willpower as where fire stop and see how to actually regain the original master plan of that city, which was designed so beautifully. And we are not littering the places and really trying to justify activities that are not. Somebody has built a skyscraper here. Why will you pull it down? This is wickedness. You see, we moralize evil. If people know that they are supposed to build, and they should have looked at the plans and see, if somebody is giving you a space that you know that is not supposed to be built, and you have taken it, and because you have connection with the person, then of course you already know from day one that that was an illegal activity. So it is important that we must begin to learn and enforce righteousness in our land. It's important. No matter how hungry people are, it's not only in Nigeria people are poor, it's not only in Nigeria people are hungry. People should be able to do things and do them legally and not become nuisance to public spaces. So this is, for me, a welcome development if, of course, the power that be will allow this to happen, so that we can, no matter who's or is God, it doesn't really matter. If this is violating the plan, let's remove it so that people can learn lesson. Lawlessness cannot take us anywhere. The only thing that can take us to the kind of a society people are dreaming of is lawfulness.